on here in East Africa is to engage our regulators. East Africa is a very unique, unique society because it covers 4 countries. We are in Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda, and Rwanda. And so we have to speak to 4 different regulators who are at different levels of development to be able then to bring this message to them. But one of the things we can share is that we were successful 2 years ago in working with one of the regulators, the biggest regulator in the market, which is Capital Markets Authority in Kenya. We worked with them to create a regulation, a performance regulation for collective investment schemes, which was largely drawn from the global investment performance standards. I can with certainty tell you that over 80% of the regulation reflects the spirit, but also the terminology and wording in the GIPS. And so that has been given us a template that we are cascading across the other markets. And so with the AMC, we believe that a blend of having the asset manager code and GIPS within the regulatory space can create much better firms, can create a better foundation for regulation, self-regulation, but also oversight by the regulators. And so I'm very, very delighted to see that our sister society in Nigeria has taken the mantle to take this message across Africa. They have invited us and our sister societies in Mauritius, in other areas, to come together to send an African message to our regulators, but also to our market participants, that we want to create best-in-class investment companies domiciled in Africa, and it should not matter which jurisdiction you are in. We all want the best for our capital markets. We want better markets, better professionals. So I'm very, very delighted that we have this conversation today, and we have the very able Ian Makara, who has, I think, like Ian years. He has like, every book I've read about performance measurement has Ian written all over it. And I'm very, very delighted to have him here speaking to us. Once again, for me, it's always a delight to listen to him. I love the conversation I had with him in London about 2 years ago, but I still want to listen to him every time because he has a passion for investment performance measurement that is infectious. I think at the end of this day, all of us are going to need vaccination against performance measurement. I'm delighted to have you all here, and I wish you wonderful deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alan, for the rousing opening remarks. I'll just give some time to Shade Odunaya, Chair of Advocacy Committee and member of Board of Trustees of CFA Society Nigeria, to give us a background of this event. Why are we here today? What do we hope to achieve by organizing this workshop for across the entire African space? Shade?
Thank you very much, Yemi, and good morning, good afternoon to you all in the room. I think Alan has done an excellent job of the background already. One thing for us in CFA Society Nigeria was that we saw the need for us to enhance the marketplace, especially in terms of the practitioners and then regulators also ensuring that the market operates in a transparent manner. Like I would always say, the only reason why we exist is for the benefit of our investors. If the markets are not operating in a manner that builds trust, then we will not have a profession called investment management or asset management, and we will have really no market in which to operate. So we started out in Nigeria by saying, okay, how do we get more firms in Nigeria to become listed in the CFA Institute website, which was our core focus area? Because currently, as at the last count, we have only 2 asset management firms listed in on the CFA Institute website as fully being AMC compliant. And we gave ourselves a goal of expanding it significantly. So we started meeting with individual asset management firms. And we found out that, yeah, they all sounded like, yeah, we have these things in some way or some form or the other. But yeah, we need to look at it and see whether we can get listed. There was interest, right? But then there was a slow pickup. And talking to the regulators, it was more or less like, bring the asset management code to us and we can enforce it across the jurisdiction. And we didn't think that was the way to go, because even the regulators were not extremely familiar as to what it is. They just wanted to do anything that will make the market more transparent and have a higher level of standards in terms of the way and manner people do things. So we decided that, okay, we had an asset management workshop last year, that maybe we need to have another one again to tickle the system and to get them to really learn how to go about ensuring they do comply. And while we were discussing it, I can't even remember how it came up. I think one of our regulators was in Ghana with another regulator in Ghana doing something. And I said to Yemi, why don't we expand it, especially since Ian will not come physically to Nigeria or anywhere else at this point in time because of COVID. It's going to be virtual. So let's just go across Africa and invite other sister societies if they're interested in joining us, so that with one stone, one attempt, or let me say that one opportunity to have Ian, we can broaden the impact across Africa. So one thing we do seek after is better integration amongst the African markets. And one message we want to pass across clearly to everyone in the room is that we also want to ensure that we have similar standards so that we can see capital flow, because capital has no grudges at all. It flows where it is most welcome and where it's going to derive the most benefit, and they can trust the system to give it the kind of return that makes sense given the risk that exists. So that's the background to how we got here today. And I'm so delighted to have in the room, fund managers from the jurisdiction covered by CFA Society East Africa, because you've met Alan, so you know that already. We have in the room Ghana, CFA Society Ghana, fund managers covered by them. We also have in the room CFA Society Mauritius, in the room as well. And of course, we have CFA Society Nigeria. And in particular, we actually have the support of the Fund Managers Association of Nigeria, which is an umbrella body for all fund managers in Nigeria, except those who are managing pension assets. So we really have those who need to hear in the room. And it's so, for me, it's a major achievement. Is a reason to rejoice that, yes, we are now finally putting it all together nicely. And I want to believe that within the next 365 days, we will actually have numbers go up in terms of uptake, in terms of ability. They are complying fully with the asset manager code. And we'll begin to see it in the actions that practitioners are actually taking in the marketplace and with respect to assuring the integrity of our capital market. Better professionals, better capital markets. And then we have better allocation of funds. Thank you very much, Yemi.
Thank you so much, Shade, for throwing more light on why we are here today. And don't go away yet. We are going to be opening the next session. It's going to be a panel discussion of representatives from different markets in Africa that have been invited for today's session. The topic for the discussion today is the adoption of the standards, the journey so far in Africa. And we have representing Ghana, Nana Weafe-Boama, CFA, is the acting president of CFA Society Ghana and also the chief investment officer of Axis Pension Trust Limited, Ghana. And for East Africa, we have Nicholas Malaki, is also a CFA charter holder, and is the chief investment officer of Sanlam Investments East Africa. For Mauritius, we have Avikesh Lode, is also a CFA charter holder and is the director, Wealth International Financial Planning Limited of Mauritius. For Nigeria, we have a representative of our partners, Fund Managers Association of Nigeria, as Shade mentioned earlier. He is Ndako Mijidadi. He is the chairman, Ethics, Rules, and Regulations Committee of Funds Managers Association of Nigeria. And we have our own Shade to moderate the panel discussion. for today. So I'll hand over back to Shade. It's a 30-minute panel session, and whatever questions that are generated, just hold on to them. We'll be able to take everything together at the end of Ian's presentation during the Q&A answer. Shade?
Thank you very much, Shemi, and a very big welcome to my panelists. I hope that what we want to do with this session, basically, since we have in the room people that cuts across the various jurisdictions, is to let everybody know where each, geographical jurisdiction, where they are with respect to the asset manager code, and hopefully inspire a zeal to move faster in terms of getting the firm to adopt the code, and therefore ensuring that the entire universe of investments improves significantly, like we would want in Africa. So may I start with, I hope I'll be able to pronounce the names very well. I'm going to ask you, first of all, everybody, I'm going to ask you the same question to start. Very briefly tell us where your market is, and an idea as to whether or not the market is even aware about the asset manager. How much awareness do we have? Maybe on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being, oh, everybody knows about the asset manager code, and 0 being, wow, we're just hearing of it when we heard about this workshop. Just place the market for us as to the kind of awareness we have of the asset manager code, and then just talk us through quickly, what's the uptake like in terms of what's happening in your market. So I hope I'm clear enough. Just a few words of sentences as to where you are in your market on a scale of 0 to 10 in terms of awareness, first of all. And then secondly, in terms of uptake in the market so far. I'm focusing now on asset manager code as a standard. I'm not talking GIBS at all. So let's just take the asset manager code because that's the focus of this workshop. So can I start with you, Nana, in Ghana? What's happening there?
Hi, Shade, and
good morning.
Thanks for the opportunity. So, in Ghana, I would say the awareness is probably, 5 right here in the industry. Thankfully, we have a growing CFA charter holder base, and most of these charter holders occupy very prominent position in their respective investment management institution, as well as growing our candidates numbers. And I believe these members and candidates are a force for good, for driving adoption of such codes in their similar institution. In addition, we had an ex-officer who works as a capital market consultant, and she's been working hard to drive the adoption of the CFA codes, including the AMC, in the market in Ghana. The uptake, obviously has been slow, but then we believe, that is why we are all gathered there, gathered here today to see what we can do to improve the adoption of the code across the entire industry in Ghana.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nana. So we know where Ghana is right now, and we're hoping that after this workshop, a lot of the Ghanaian firms will, voluntarily, right, do a review and then comply, and so they can say they are fully adopted. Now, let me move to my home, Fund Managers Association of Nigeria. Thank you so much for partnering with CFA Society Nigeria. You are also represented on our GIBS country sponsoring committee. So we have had that partnership for quite a while now. Ndako, you're representing Fund Managers Association, and you're actually chairman Ethics, Rules and Regulation Committee, which is quite, it's gratifying to know you have a committee that's focused on that area. So can you just talk us through where are we in the Nigerian space on that scale of 0 to 10 as well? And then briefly, what's the uptake? And what are you doing probably to improve it?
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Shade. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Fantastic. Thank you. I think, first of all, I'll say on behalf of the Fund Managers Association of Nigeria, thank you so much for organizing this event and for all the work that you do to continue deepening our market. Clearly, this comes from a position of passion and dedication. So it's much appreciated. So for us as an association, our membership base is in the excess of about 100 fund managers in the country. Now, part of the reasons why the association was formed was to promote ethics and professionalism within the investment management industry. Hence, the creation of committees, such as the committee that I chair, which is for ethics, regulations, and rules. Now, it's good to also understand how our market is structured. We have a large collective investment scheme market, if I can use that word, but we have potentially even larger schemes that are outside the collective investment scheme space. So for a long time, a lot has been done to aggregate data around the exact scope of our market. But then if we use the collective investment scheme market as an indicator, we're looking at somewhere in the excess of $1 trillion naira in terms of size. Now, within this space, we have two managers right now that are claiming compliance with the AMC. This is not to say that across the industries, there's no familiarity with the codes and standards. And this is because sometime around 2017, at least, the Nigerian Securities Regulator, that's the Securities and Exchange Commission, included a code of professional conduct for asset managers in its rules. And in terms of objectives, it was very similar to the CFA AMC. So in terms of professional ethics, benefits to clients, independence, what have you, including following regulations, this was put into that document. So there is I would say, a good degree of familiarity. In terms of compliance, we believe that things can go a lot further. On our own end as FMAN, we put our full weight behind supporting the AMC and various levels of standardization across our market, be that in GIBS, be that in performance reporting, be that in terms of compliance with regulations and making sure things are done in a structured manner. So we're very happy. We're very happy to be here. And like you said, we hope that in 365 days and counting, we'll be able to see this number grow significantly with this partnership.
Thank you very much for giving us status of the market in DACO. And I'm glad to note that the Fund Manager Association of Nigeria is exceptionally interested in deepening the market and ensuring that there's an adoption of the AMC code. In one instance, I also know you're pushing GIBS as well. So thank you so much. Can I come to you now, CFA Mauritius, Avikesh? I hope I pronounced your name correctly.
That's correct, Sally.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I'd like you to give us answer the same set of questions. What's happening in your market? Is there awareness, and what kind of uptake do you have so far?
So first of all, thank you for arranging this webinar, everyone. And welcome again. Just before going into the topic, maybe I could give just a brief overview of the asset management industry of Mauritius. So 10 to 15 years ago, this market was predominantly dominated, I would say in some sense, by more traditional banks and pension companies. As all of you might know, Mauritius is predominantly a jurisdiction offering mainly asset administration services. But what we've seen over the last 10 to 15 years, there are more players in the market to manage money. So lots of offshore banks or fund managers have seen the opportunity to set up the investment base here rather than just conducting administration services, right? So we have also a growing pool of professionals who can provide those services. So it's still a growing industry in some sense, right? But we are getting there and enlarging the services. So Mauritius as a gateway to invest into Africa is becoming true, right? And then when we go deeper into the asset manager code and the awareness, obviously with the growing number of charter holders and members within the country, among CFA members and charter holders, there's a good awareness of the code. But when we look at the market as a whole, right, I'm not too sure that there's much awareness about the code, right, even from the regulator perspective. So we have never discussed about that, or they might be aware, but there's nothing which is recommended or implemented yet. So we are probably at a 2-3, I would say, right? But that being said, it's not that the managers are not following what should be done, right? So the regulator itself has lots of regulations and conditions and regulatory requirements which the manager are abiding to. So for example, when we look at the global view, it's more national code of corporate governance, which ensures that manager has the policies and procedures in place to conduct activity in the best interest of all investors. So it covers mainly the ethical and professional responsibilities. All firms have their own code of ethics and code of conduct, but there's no standardized version of it, right? If you could say that. So I think collaboration with all the societies in Africa is something which is very needed for Mauritius. And when we look at other countries like Nigeria or Ghana, who are far ahead on the curve with implementing that in the countries, I think we could benefit a lot from that. And this will probably need to be discussed with the regulator from a regulatory perspective. But as you know, Mauritius has recently been removed from the FATF grey list. So there's a building of investors trust, I would say, in some sense. So an adoption of AMC would further enhance the country's credibility as a financial services hub and attract more investors.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Abhikash, for giving us that background. Mauritius is the gateway, like you said, and we in Nigeria, for instance, look at Mauritius as being ahead of us in terms of sophistication. And so to just hear you say that, yes, we have, I do know that your population of charter holders is much smaller than we have in Nigeria, but you've been at it for longer because your society is actually older than our society. So it's good to know that we're not very far apart when it comes to awareness by the firms, not just by charter holders, in terms of ensuring that they look at how they're operating and confirm that they're fully in compliance. And we all agreed that integration amongst African markets would actually be useful for us if we can have standards that are similar. It will make it easier for the capital to flow and for investment to flow across Africa. I seem to be missing CFA Society East Africa. Nicholas Malaki, are you in the room? If you're in the room, please, I'd like him to be pinned because it will be good to also find out. Fantastic. Nicholas, who was hiding you before? They didn't want us to hear you speak. You're welcome, Nicholas.
Thank you, Madam Convener. First, thank you for inviting me to the forum. I know I'm no longer at the society in terms of directorship, but I'm a member. Number two, I think markets are opening up. I think travel is beginning to resume. So I'm currently in transit. So if you hear a bit of noise in the background, don't feel too bad as I'm in transit. Okay.
No.
So let me speak for my Kenyan experience and how we are. I think the awareness of the AMC is fair, to say the least. I mean, I think most firms are aware. But there is a clear gap in terms of reception or acceptance of the code between local homegrown AMCs and those that are linked to much more bigger multinationals. So I think just because of their stage of development in terms of expertise and trying to get business, so they may be a bit lax, slightly, just because, you know, they're beginning from somewhere. But I think for the larger AMCs, they seem to be moving in track, you know, and moving towards compliance, not only with the AMC code, but we've got other codes like the trusteeship code, you know, we've got the JIPS, etc., etc. So quite a good approach. I tend to sit on FMA, which is the Fund Managers Association. And I think it is clear that our own approach is not to have regulators interfere or be seen to be the people behind. I think they can get the buy-in. We would like them to support it. Because once you embed this in a regulation and then there's a change to the code, it becomes very difficult for the regulator to go and change their guidelines in terms of compliance with such a code. So yes, we appreciate they have got a role to play, but they cannot force people as part of your regulated reporting to say that you are complying with a code, which is specifically a professional code, and it's quite voluntary to the members who subscribe to that profession. So I mean, I think we are quite clear on that. Yeah, and so that is where we are. I would say probably maybe 60, and as Alan said, these markets in East Africa tend to move in the same direction at the same time. So we are not too badly off. We like collaboration with the regulators, but no interference. Thanks that for now.
Nicholas, I like the way you brought it out clearly that, see, we would not want regulators to interfere. And that's the stand of the CFA Institute as well, that this code should be a voluntary thing. And we did have a session with regulators on Monday this week on this AMC code as well. And you can be sure that Ian made it quite clear that it should be something they should support and they should encourage, but they shouldn't embed it for the reason that you actually stated was the reason he gave to them, that when the code then changes, how quickly are you going to be able to change your regulation? Because they are basically principles really of operating. So thank you very much, Nicholas, for elaborating and putting us in the know of where the market is in East Africa. East Africa, for those who do not know it, CFA Society East Africa actually covers 4 countries. If you didn't join us at the beginning, so they are a bit more, it's an interesting landscape they are covering. They cover Uganda, Tanzania, Kenya, and Rwanda. And you can be sure that each of those countries will be at various levels of development with respect to their fund management industry. So one last question as I have to round up very quickly to each one of you. I'd like you to just state clearly where you would like Ian to focus on today, because you know where the pain is. Yeah, he's going to try and cover everything, but just mention an area that you think that he should focus on in his presentation, just to guide him so that we can draw the most out of this 45 minutes we're going to have with him. So this time around, I will start with Avikesh, with Mauritius, if you don't mind. Avikesh, could you please just state the area of focus you would like the workshop to take?
Sorry, Sadi, can you repeat the question? Had a slight connection issue.
Oh, okay, sorry. I said my question simply is, what area would you like the workshop to focus on? Ian is presenting the workshop. Do you have any particular area of the AMC, or what concept do you want him to hone in his presentation so that your people from your jurisdiction can most benefit from it?
So if we look at the AMC itself, right? So it mostly focuses on different areas like benefit to clients, which ensure the client benefit from them, right? So maybe there's no particular area as such, but probably ensure independence and objectivity. You know, what we've seen recently in the local market, there are more new type of new assets, like the digital assets. So new regulation has been created. So probably focus on the skill, competence, and diligence that need to have in terms of those assets, right? So that what the code must cover, in particular when we are looking at those assets.
Okay, thank you very much, Avikesh, for pinpointing that. He will try, but I'm not sure he will have a lot of time, but let's just hear what the others want him to focus on. Nana, where would you like Ian to drill down more a little more deeply? I won't say deeply.
Interesting question. So I'm quite interested in the client's communication among bets, how asset managers communicate investment returns to clients. And of course, loyalty to clients is a passion of mine. So those 2 areas will suffice for now.
Okay, fantastic, Nana. Now, Ndako, what would you like him to focus on?
Thank you, Shadi. It's a tough question because there are so many great areas, and I'm sure we're going to have a number of sessions, to talk about each one of these areas. But if I am pressed to speak to it, I'll say things around investment process and action, and that's mainly because in emerging markets like ours, where the markets themselves are not very efficient, it's important to know the importance of the ethical conduct to ensure that people are not trading to distort prices, manipulating the market, you know, things like that. Even to be sure that there's no information leakages between companies that have group structures such that one person has an advantage over the other, just to be sure that an investor that's participating in the market is able to be sure that he's getting good value. He's not being dealt with unfairly, you know. So speaking to the benefits of each of the codes, I think will be it.
Okay, thank you very much, Ndako, for pinpointing that. I'm sure Ian is taking notes, and I hope that I'm not giving him too much to do by asking you this question. Nicholas, it's your turn now to pinpoint the area you would like him to focus on.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I can listen to Ian for 6 hours anytime, but I know, of course, the session is limited. But I think what I'd like him to touch on is certainly in terms of disclosures on whether if you are a charter holder and you work for an asset management company, then how do you get market-wide kind of disclosures on who has adopted the code or not? Because then we are not competing at the same level. So how do we narrow that? Is there some form of, where people subscribe to and say, I, as Nick Malaki at Sanlam, I subscribe, etc., etc. And that will help us to know, not just in terms of adoption, because we can speak on this call. Everyone will say we are moving towards it, but practically, there's no attestation. I know it's purely a voluntary issue, but how to verify attestation then could be a good, interesting point from his experience, what he has seen so far.
Okay, thank you also very much. I'm sure Ian will try to tilt his presentation or just say a little more words in each of the areas you have identified. I know he's going to cover the entire code, but he's going to spend the bulk of his time trying to get everyone to realize that adopting it actually makes more sense than not, because it just places your firm in a special category amongst other competing firms. And it's also going to speak to the fact that it also aids you in terms of risk management and ensuring that your business will run on a long-term sustainable basis. So Ian, I'm certain that you are capable. So many people here said they can listen to you for hours. I've always enjoyed your session myself, so I'm one of your ardents as well. So we want Africa to move along, to become, to improve in every area so that we can compete even with the developed markets. And why not use a global standards instead of having to develop each one for each market? So I'm going to turn it back to Yemi, who is our continuity announcer, so to speak, or our MC. Who will continue this session. Thank you all for listening, and it's been a pleasure moderating this session. Thank you. Yemi, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shade, for that lively discussion with the panelists. Thank you so much. At this point in time, I'd like to introduce Ian Makara. His job has been cut out for him by Shade. I'm sure if Shade had opened up that question to the participants on the call today, you would have gotten many more varied wish lists from different people. So we have Ian Makara, Director, Global Industry Standards for EMEA region at CFA Institute. So give us the presentation for Asset Managers Code, especially tilted towards operators and other participants in the market, having already done so for regulators on Monday. Ian, over to you.
Thank you very much. Sade, you have set me up for failure. You have also set me up for about the next 5 webinars that we could do based on the input from the panel members. So thank you for all of that. I will try to address things. If I don't address them adequately enough, please come in on the Q&A and ask for a deeper dive on any particular part of what we're going to discuss. So to move ahead, let's get straight into the presentation. The presentation slides are going to be made available to everybody as a PDF, so don't worry about taking copious notes of what is on the screen. So the Asset Manager Code, one of several codes and standards that the CFA Institute is responsible for sponsoring. This one specifically addresses the behavior and the professionalism and the conduct of firms. This is aimed at a firm level adoption of behaviors, conduct, an Asset Manager Code of professional conduct. We also have GIPS, the Global Investment Performance Standards, which has been referred to by many folks, Alan, at the start of the session, and since in between. We have the Trustee Pension Code. We also have the ESG disclosure guidelines, which have literally just come out this month. So a number of different global industry standards that we support. But for today, we're talking about the Asset Manager Code. There is just a brief set of contents of what is included within my presentation. As has been mentioned, these are voluntary code of standards, principles-based, designed specifically for asset management firms. What's the deal around a voluntary code of conduct? And I have just taken from the state government of Victoria in Australia their view on what a voluntary code is all about. It aims to help industry members improve their business practices and also meet their regulatory obligations. There's specific standards of conduct, voluntarily agreed by signatories, about how industry members deal with each other and with their customers. That really does capture a voluntary code of conduct in a nutshell, and why we like voluntary. Voluntary is an indication that the firms that are adopting the voluntary code wish to go above and beyond what they must do. Everybody has to do what they must do, but to really pin your flag to the mast by saying we are prioritizing the way we conduct ourselves, what we do and the way we carry out our business practices, really does show that, to put it in our vernacular, they've put their money where their mouth is, that they want to put resources to ensuring that they uphold best practices, ethical conduct for business. Why does that matter? We'll get into that, and particularly nowadays, why we consider you are absolutely on the cusp of a development around ethical best practices and showing that the industry and the individual firms within the industry, not to mention the individuals themselves, actually conduct themselves following best practice for the benefit of the investors. Because as Sade said, if we don't have the investors, if we don't have the capital flows, we don't have the industry. So we've got to show that we operate following global best practices so that the flows find the best place where they wish to be and where they are treated in the best way possible. So in terms of AMC and how it came about, it's a collaborative effort between the CFA Institute and investment professionals. Every CFA charter holder, every CFA candidate, and also CIPM candidate or CIPA designatory signs up to what is called the CFA Institute Code of Ethics and Standards of Professional Conduct. So they are individually held to that level of conduct. And 15 years ago, when AMC was first thought about, it was really driven by the idea of these individuals coming together and saying, we follow this code, but we want the firms that we operate within to also be able to adopt this code. It is good for the firms, it is good for the industry, but it is also good for us as individuals to know that we can operate under a set of ethical standards that speak to us, that mimic the behaviors that we want to show within the industry, within the firm. The firm supports us and we can support the firm because we have coexistence around the level of professionalism that we want to uphold within the firms. So AMC really came out of that driving from those charter holders and candidates who expressed interest in ethical best practices. Now, the other thing to mention about AMC, and this has been mentioned a little bit, when you claim compliance with AMC, it's an all or nothing, okay? all the requirements, all the provisions that within AMC must be being met by the firm. It's not a comply or explain. We do 1, 2, 3, but we don't do 4, 5, 6. That's not it. To claim compliance, you have to have addressed every provision within the AMC. Now, in some instances, as part of the journey, there may be some regulators who look at it and say, well, yes, we can put this in place or we can support that, but we can't do the other. That, unfortunately, does not allow any firms to claim compliance with AMC. It's great as it's part of the journey, and we would hope to then complete the journey by ensuring that the firms can claim compliance by following all the provisions within the code. So it's not a comply or explain, it's an all or nothing. That means there does need to be resources put into the consideration of the AMC and looking at how you bring the firm into line with the AMC across all of those provisions. It's not trivial, but 365 days, I've heard that mentioned a couple of times, that's good. That's a great amount of time. If people start now thinking about it, within 365 days, I am sure there are firms that could easily address what is required within the standards and be able to claim compliance. Now, it's voluntary. It goes above and beyond potentially what is required by the regulators. So you will look at what the regulators require and ensure that those requirements are also built into the policies and procedures that are being followed by the firm in order to claim compliance with AMC. Should there be any contradiction between what is required by the laws and regulations and what is in AMC, the laws and regulations take precedent. You would put into your policies and procedures that relate to AMC that because of XYZ law or regulation, you adopt the following policy. And as long as that description is included in your AMC policies and procedures, and it's because there is a requirement from the laws or regulations that you must follow, then you can still claim compliance with AMC. But again, because these are principle-based, the likelihood that there is that level of detail in what is required by the laws or regulations versus what AMC is asking you to do, it's probably slim that there's going to be that direct conflict between the laws and regulations and what AMC requires. Why is this a big deal now, of all times? Let me read you a brief comment from a speech that was made by Andrew Bailey, who's now the chair of the UK Financial Conduct Authority. This was a speech in 2016, not that long ago. My assessment of recent history, he said, is that there has not been a case of a major prudential or conduct failing in a firm which did not have among its root causes a failure of culture as manifested in governance, remuneration, risk management, or tone from the top. So his perspective then, and now as the head of the FCA, is failures of conduct which are caused by a lack of good governance around a number of different issues, and predominantly driven by the tone from the top not being strong enough, are the reasons why there have been major prudential or conduct failings in firms. What is the asset manager code of conduct addressing? Exactly these issues, exactly the area where it is considered the biggest possibility of failure occurring within asset management firms. 2016. In terms of what regulators are looking at the moment, right now, this comes from a paper published in 2020. Regulators are focused on efforts of financial services companies to identify and prevent misconduct. Asset manager code of conduct. Let me just emphasize that yet again. Conduct risk frameworks will be expected to be integrated throughout the operations of the company as part of a culture of ethics and compliance. Ethical Best Practices 2020. Regulators and stakeholders are increasingly expecting investigations of ethical misconduct to help prevent misconduct, diagnosis of systematic weaknesses. Conduct. This is what concerns globally the asset management industry. So this is not just an Africa issue. This is worldwide, and you are at the beginning of a journey on this and can help lead, in fact, where globally there is still a lack of ethical best practices being put in place. Conduct risk management frameworks should be applied enterprise-wide, i.e. the firm must be adopting conduct risk management policies to capture and assess relevant information on incentive compensation plans, customer sales practices, trading activities, and market integrity in order to demonstrate proactive monitoring and prevention of misconduct and related customer harm. All the input we've had from our panelists, the comments that we've had from Sade, are speaking to these issues that have been raised and are continually being raised. Right now, this is the time for a conduct that relates to ethical best practices and putting the investors' interests first to be addressed. So we need to look at strengthening governance and culture, and we believe that AMC indeed does that. There is a belief that industry culture is a root cause of misconduct. There's proof of that in what we've just read. Regulators are looking to senior management and boards to drive culture and drive ethical change and take responsibility for establishing the right culture. This is the tone from the top idea, okay? If the worker bees look at the top and see the way that the people at the top, the C-suite, conduct themselves, they are going to follow those behaviors. That is what happens. If they don't see the drive from the top, they are not going to know what to do given certain circumstances. If the tone can be set from the top, it can be put into place by those throughout the organization, and the organization can hold itself up as following ethical best practices. Another idea is that employees knowing what the culture is of the firm, knowing what the practices are that the firm supports, themselves feel secure. They can understand, given a particular situation, from a principles-based idea, how they should behave, what they should do. They can support the firm knowing that the firm will support them because the firm has in place a concept behind conduct, behavior, and ethical best practice. Now, employees who are secure, who know how they can carry out their jobs to the best of their ability, are going to remain with an organization that supports that. And that is sustainability. And sustainability is key within the industry as well. It's not just about being green. Sustainability is about how you sustain your organization. And one of the ways to sustain an organization is to ensure that the employees, the human resources within that organization, are safe and supported and know how they should be behaving. That the actions that they take will be supported by the firm because the firm itself indicates the actions that it wishes to take and how it wishes to behave in the marketplace. So there's sustainability involved with better culture, better governance, ethical behavior. Culture as a concept can reinforce or indeed defeat formal governance. It's all very well to have laws and regulations and the regulators to be telling you, you should be doing this. But if the culture of the firm itself is not reinforcing those behaviors that are required, that regulation is not going to survive within that organization. Voluntary adoption of standards driven by the tone of the top and filtered through the whole organization will reinforce good governance, more so than laws or regulations being imposed from the outside, because it is inherent, it is part of the blood flowing through that firm, the voluntary adoption of these codes and standards. Culture itself is defined as the implicit norms that guide behavior in the absence of regulations or compliance rules. The culture of an organization is what it believes it should be doing itself, regardless of who is watching or whether they are being regulated into doing it. It is actually the essence of how they wish to conduct their business. Andrew Bailey again said, you can't regulate culture. You can't actually say to an organization, show us your culture. We believe that AMC, if adopted by a firm, can actually be a practical expression of the culture that the firm is adopting. Ethical best practices, putting your clients first. So it relates to all of that. Whilst you might not be able to say, show us your culture, you can say, here is what we are doing, here is what we are voluntarily adopting in order to indicate to you the way we are going to behave as a firm. We also believe at the moment this is key as we are going through a transforming environment for work practices, with remote work, with some returning to work, some not returning to work, hybrid work environment. It is absolutely key that employees know how they should behave given a group of scenarios. They may not have their colleagues sitting next to them to question as to whether they should act in a certain way or not act in a certain way. But if the firm has a set of principles in place that define the behaviors and the culture that the firm is following, the employees will understand better how they should work when they are in isolation and they cannot turn to colleagues to ask for their guidance. With key person dependencies, and again, unfortunately, given the impact of COVID, or whatever else might come around the corner, who knows, you have to be able to move responsibilities between individuals, and those individuals understand from a principles-based perspective how they should respond to any given issue that may turn up. Again, business continuity, business resiliency, business recovery, knowing from an ethical best practices perspective how to keep the business moving and operating in the best interests of all stakeholders and best interests of the clients is key. And having something like the AMC in place helps with both business continuity and business resiliency. They're demonstrable policies, procedures, controls, and the control environment. This helps control risk as well. This helps to control reputational risk, corporate social responsibility, all of those different issues. And again, back to the sustainability, the provision of guidance to employees, aligning the interests of the company and their clients, and limiting conflicts of interests is actually a definition of sustainability as put out by SASB in their Asset Management and Custody Activities Accounting Standard, October 2018. This is now we're talking about. So provision of guidance to employees aligning the interests of the company and their clients, limiting conflicts of interest. Insufficient support of employees may lead to diminished trust with clients and therefore lead to litigation and diminution of all stakeholders' value and impact the sustainability of the firm. So the very continuity of the firm, if there is insufficient support of employees, could be threatened. And again, by putting into place a code of conduct that flows through the organization, that is applicable to everybody, from the top to every single employee, really allows employees to understand the alignment of their interests and the company, all stakeholders and their clients together, a strengthened form of governance. Now again, how are some of the corporations out there looking at this? Well, let's look at Jamie Dimon, who, as you know, is a CEO of JP Morgan, of which I am an alum prior to joining CFA Institute. Jamie said in his latest shareholder letter, 2020, businesses must earn the trust of their customers and communities by acting ethically and morally. I don't think I have to say any more on that. That speaks to what Alan was saying. That speaks to DARCO many, many times, this concept of ethical behavior, moral code, and earning the trust of their customers. If you want the flows to come to you, you have to earn the trust of the owners of those flows. Businesses must earn the trust of their customers and communities by acting ethically and morally. 2020, Jamie Dimon. Larry Fink, BlackRock. Delivering value for all stakeholders is critical to our long-term success, sustainability. We have a responsibility to put our clients' best interest at the center of every decision we make. BlackRock. So they have exactly the same concerns, exactly the same views that have been expressed by our panelists and about what we're talking today. And we believe that AMC is one of the ways we can address these concerns or these requirements. Corporate responsibility, again from SSGA, State Street Global Advisors. We continue to believe that corporate responsibility is critical to long-term value, and we participate in many industry associations to share best practices. Long-term value, sustainability, corporate responsibility. How do you practically indicate your beliefs and your agreement that these are important? By adopting AMC, okay? This is what we believe. This is why this is such a pertinent discussion to have right now, today, because we're addressing the concerns of the industry and the regulators of the industry that are out there at this moment. AMC has been around for 15 years. We were ahead of the curve. We're now smack into the curve. And this is the time to start adopting this and address these global issues in the asset management industry. Finally, an inclusive culture where our employees thrive and feel valued and supported is what is required. We hold our employees and leadership accountable to standards of conduct that ensure our business is run in an ethical and responsible manner. State Street Corporate Responsibility Report 2019. This is exactly what we're talking about. This is what the panelists have been raising. It's a global issue, and now's our chance in the African continent to start to address it. So what is the Asset Manager Code? Well, that's it. Two sides of one piece of paper. That's precisely what it is. It is a set of principles that are there with the blue title, which are then expressed through 6 different sections, which in turn, each of those sections has a number of provisions. There are 40 provisions in total that would need to be addressed with the Asset Manager Code. Address all of those provisions, stick your way of looking at those within a policies and procedures document that also says how you're going to conduct yourselves, and you can claim compliance with AMC. 2 sides of a piece of paper. However, some of these are really rather deep dive, complex ideas that need to be addressed. Loyalty to clients, acting in a professional and ethical manner at all times, act for the benefit of clients. These are not little trivial statements, and you have to have policies and procedures in place that will support these principles and these concepts within your firm in order to be able to claim compliance with the Asset Manager Code. We'll come back to this 2-pager later in the presentation. So as I said, 6 general principles, and there they are on the left-hand side. And these, again, are the concepts, the ideas that we want to see in the investment processes and in the ethical conduct that the firm is upholding. Act in a professional and ethical manner at all times. Act for the benefit of clients. Act with independence and objectivity. Again, that speaks to the ideas that Mauritius wanted to focus on. Act with independence and objectivity. Act with skill, competence, diligence. Communicate with clients in a timely and accurate manner. That, again, that concerned Ghana, the client communications, how they should be carried out. Uphold the applicable rules of governing capital markets, laws and regulations that we talked about. Now, if we look at those particular principles, we can also take underlying components of those principles and basically put them into 6 different sections. And those sections are considered loyalty to clients, clients' interests being put first, the investment process and actions, trading, risk management, compliance and support of those, performance and valuation, and disclosures. So within all of those principles, any one or combination of those sections and concepts within those sections could be applied. Okay, so we'll see as we move through the standards how we can think about breaking them down into these particular areas. Now, within those sections, loyalty to clients, investment process and actions, trading, risk management, compliance and support, performance and valuation, disclosures, there are individual provisions that need to be met. Loyalty to clients is covered with 3 provisions that are laid out on those 2 sides of the piece of paper that I showed you earlier. There's 7 provisions that speak to risk management, compliance and support, 5 that speak to trading, 2 that speak to performance and valuation, a number that speak to the various disclosures that need to be made. And each of those individual 40 provisions must be considered in the policies and procedures supporting documentation that a firm claiming compliance must be providing. Now, just to take a little diversion to think about how this can interact with regulators. If regulators are supporting the idea of putting in place AMC as a voluntary code within their marketplace, one thing the regulators can do as they are promoting firms to adopt this voluntary code is say, quite rightly, if you are advertising the fact that you are compliant with a certain standard, when we come and speak to you, which we do frequently, because that's all part of being a regulator, being a supervisory authority, we will just check that the advertisement that you're making that says, by the way, we're compliant with AMC, is in fact being upheld correctly. And one of the ways they can do that would be to take those policies and procedures that you've created and have a quick look through and see whether they are the correct depth, the correct scale, whether they have addressed all the different components that need to be addressed. It's not a huge undertaking for the regulator to do that as part of their usual supervisory duties, particularly when they are promoting the support of these voluntary codes and standards within their market. So that is one way that they can oversee and have a supervisory overview of claims that are being made. To address another issue, every year, a firm that is claiming compliance with AMC has to notify the CFA Institute by filling out a standard form available on our website that they are indeed claiming compliance with the Asset Manager Code of Conduct. We therefore have a database of all firms that are claiming compliance with the Asset Manager Code, and that data is available to anybody to see on our website. So we are fully aware on an annual basis who is claiming compliance with the code. And that is broken down by marketplace that they operate in and a variety of other components as well. So we know, and in fact you'll see later, how we can use some of that information to show how AMC is being adopted in different marketplaces. So again, it's public knowledge that a firm is claiming compliance with Asset Manager Code. It's an advertisement from those firms that they are following a certain set of standards, and therefore regulators could easily step in and say, great, we're just going to check that that advertisement is valid. What are the benefits of a firm actually wishing to adopt the standards? Well, I've gone through what is going on in the industry and why we believe AMC truly helps direct firms in the way that the industry regulators and the industry itself wants to go. There are enhanced business practices which enhance the reputation of the entity claiming compliance. Better governance feeds through to better reputation, better trust between the firm and the industry, and the firm and its clients and prospective clients. The signatories, those that are claiming compliance, are presenting themselves as meeting industry best practice. This is a global standard. There is no other global standard. So any firm that is claiming compliance with this standard, wherever they operate, is standing shoulder to shoulder with any other firm that is claiming compliance with this standard. As I said earlier, it goes beyond what everybody must do. It truly indicates that this entity claiming compliance believes that this is the best practice and they wish to be following it. They're going above and beyond what they must do. If, when they're looking at the laws and regulations that they have to be following, they actually see that, oh, well, everything that the laws and regulations require, AMC also requires, there's a perfect match. Well, then great. Claim compliance with AMC, make sure you've got your policies and procedures document in place, and you're getting 2 for 1. But the fact of the matter is, AMC is a global standard. Your laws and regulations will be a national standard. So hold yourself out there as being comparable to any other firm in the whole global marketplace for asset management. Greater stakeholder and investor confidence in the industry is what is key for sustainability. So build the trust, build the belief. The capital flows will come to the place where they believe they are going to be treated the best. That is key. You have to compete globally in order to attract those capital flows. And that is the point that Sade made, and that is so key. So anything you can do to show that you are comparable is a good thing for the long-term growth of the industry. Mitigating business conduct risk is key. AMC addresses culture and purpose. What are you there to do as a firm? What do you believe you can do for your investors? What is the culture that you support actively, voluntarily within your organization? Stronger ethical culture through strong governance lowers the risk of conduct violations. Yeah, it's not a matter of just writing this document and then putting it on a shelf. It has to permeate through the firm. Those behaviors and those beliefs in ethical best practices have to be shown practically by the way the firm conducts itself. But a strong ethical culture through strong governance will lower the risk of conduct violations and build trust. It's a practical demonstration of the culture of the firm, and firm-wide, tone from the top, moving through all the staff, provides consistency and shared values, which are key again within the marketplace. So finally, it's also a way to attract and retain talent, and there is a move for talent nowadays within the organization, within the marketplace. Investment professionals prefer to work in organizations that share their values, that value their skills, that show their competence and their diligence. And therefore, firms that have in place the Asset Manager Code, which, as I said earlier, is a firm's reflection of the individual code that CFA charter holders, CFA candidates have to follow, will indeed attract those types of professionals. And even if there are folks out there who are not charter holders, not candidates, but believe in putting the investor first and ethical best practices, knowing that the firm that you're looking at or working in supports those values, will enable those professionals to feel comfortable and really commit to the firm that they are working in. In a nutshell, employees know how to support the firm because of the values and behaviors the firm supports, and that the firm itself will support them when the employees are supporting those cultural behaviors. That again leads to sustainability. So what about this global reach I've been going on about? In a nutshell, we have over 1,150 organizations that are currently claiming compliance with AMC. So in the last annual review, over 1,150. They are spaced around 47 different markets. 15 of the top 20 investment managers, when we look at the size of investment managers by AUM, are claiming compliance with AMC for all or part of their business. This standard is not something that is going to go away. We have already been maintaining it for over 15 years. Now, 15 years and we have 1,150 firms, maybe not such a great track record, but really where it has become established is where there has been a series of resources that have been available nationally, locally, to promote the asset management code. It is superb to hear today from the panelists of some of the dedication that is going to go into supporting the outreach and letting people know that the AMC exists. So I would really hope, again, within 365 days, to see some significant growth in numbers where there are the resources being put to enable firms to understand what it takes to claim compliance with AMC and what AMC really represents. So here, and I hope you can see this, I don't know how large it will come out, you can see the current distribution of firms claiming compliance with the Asset Manager Code. The biggest number by far is within the USA, 760 firms claiming compliance. However, there are a large number of organizations which operate globally that consider themselves domiciled or headquartered in the US. All of those will be included in the 760 that is in the US. What is good to see on this is that there is a distribution around the world. We have South American, we have the North American, we have EMEA. There's a number of firms within EMEA where I have not put circles around the numbers just because it obliterates the individual numbers from the various different countries. Portugal, Spain, Germany, Switzerland, the Nordic countries, Russia, Asia Pacific, a significant number there in Australia, and a smattering within other Asia Pacific markets as well. As was referred to, I think, by Sade earlier on, 32 firms in South Africa claiming compliance with AMC. That number has been fairly consistent over quite a few years. There was a big push in South Africa a few years ago to introduce AMC and to show why AMC was valuable in their environment. There is no reason why we could not see similar numbers throughout the continent of Africa, given support and given uptake from societies and associations within the continent who would see the benefit of AMC within African nations. So there we are in terms of global distribution. We also have a number of asset owners who claim compliance with the Asset Manager Code as well. USA, Mexico, Costa Rica, and Uruguay pension schemes are very keen to show that they have adopted the best practices in terms of managing the assets that they are responsible for. They're not their assets, they belong to participants or they belong to the country in which they operate. And so they are keen to show that they have adopted ethical best practices. And we would love to see those numbers grow. There are about 18 different asset owners scattered around those four markets that currently claim compliance with the Asset Manager Code. How are we going to let you, the firms, the operators, actually achieve compliance with this standard? So I have a little slide here which looks terribly, terribly easy. So you compare your Asset Manager Code with what you currently have in place in your organization. You make any needed revisions to align with the Asset Manager Code, and then you notify us. Well, that didn't take long. That was about 5 seconds. There's a lot more involved than that, and we'll get into some of the details. But that really is, in essence, what it is. Look at what you've currently got in terms of your policies and procedures around your conduct and the way you behave. Change anything that is missing or needs to be further tuned in order to meet the requirements of the AMC, and then notify CFA Institute. Don't forget, all along the way, laws and regulations that you have to comply with must also be included. How do we help you actually do this job? Well, we have a number of different resources all available through the website. And in case anyone's concerned, there are no costs associated with adopting this code. There's no fees, there's no registration fees, anything like that. And all these resources are available free of charge. This is part of the CFA Institute and CFA Society's perspective on making sure professionalism is supported within the asset management industry. So it's part of our mission to raise the profile and raise the professionalism worldwide of the asset management industry. So we have the fact sheet, the 2-page that I've just shown you, guidance and recommendations. We have a help desk where any questions from firms dealing with AMC can send in a question and get a response from a subject matter expert. We have some implementation and assessment guidance. We have sample policies and procedures. I'm going to go into that a little bit further. We have some sample forms helping the firms to collect information from their employees about what they're doing, trading, pre-certification in terms of trades that they may wish to do, holdings that they may have, which helps to determine whether there may be any conflicts of interest, things like that. We also have cross-referencing tools to help with looking at the provisions that are in AMC and what is required in terms of the disclosures and ensuring that each of those are covered within your own policies and procedures document. So let's go back here to the AMC as it stands, just in its bland statement, the 40 provisions divided into those 6 sections supporting the 6 principles. We saw those slides earlier on. So let's have a look at some sample policies and procedures which we would supply that would help a firm manage getting into compliance. Within our sample policies and procedures, we have 23 different policies that are addressed. We illustrate for each of those how the principles are actioned by those sample policies and procedures and how they would conform with AMC through those actions. Don't forget, as I've said, policies and procedures that you put in place must reflect all the laws and regulations, and they take precedence over the AMC requirements. So here are the 23 different policies and procedures that we have within the summary, and you can see they're the sort of things that we are addressing. The summary of the compliance program that is being followed. What is the compliance officer's policy? What are the client disclosures policies? Jurisdictional licensing and registration. Compliance with client investment restrictions. Consistency with investment objectives. Proprietary trading. And I'll go into that one in a little more detail. The asset management agreement policy. Policies and procedures on material, non-public, so inside information. Privacy policy. Business continuity plan, advertising, client complaints, custody and safeguarding, valuation policies. We can go on, and as you look through those, you can see how all these policies and procedures are addressing ethical best practices and putting the client's interests first. So let's move through. Let's look at, in detail, the sample proprietary trading policy and what is within our guidelines on how you can look at this. So cut down, it basically says the proprietary trading policy has a requirement that to the extent the code insists that client interests come first, it would of necessity govern principal transactions, securities or other asset transactions in which the asset manager has a proprietary interest. Both principal and riskless principal trades may be subject to regulation in our jurisdiction. Then you put in what is your local law or regulation around this particular concept of proprietary trading policy. And then if the firm actually manages proprietary funds, put in what is your governance around your policy for proprietary trading. So this sample, it's not telling you what should be in your policies and procedures. It's giving you ideas of what you would put into your policies and procedures document in order to support the concept of governance around proprietary trading and your policy around that. Then you would put in, so you've got requirements there for this particular concept of proprietary trading. Then you'd put in what your policy is. If your firm doesn't engage in that, you would say that. If your firm later on begins to engage in proprietary trading, you would alter your policies and procedures document to reflect that. Policies and procedures document should be updated regularly and should be versioned, because if somebody wants to look at what you did do and what you currently do, there may be differences over time. And a good set of policies and procedures regularly updated is key for business continuity and possibly business recovery. So making sure that they are maintained on a frequent updated basis is also key. Version control. So you've got your policies, you've got your procedures, you've got your requirements, you've got your policies. So what are the procedures for ensuring that what you've said is being carried out in terms of the policy actually occurs? Policy, procedures, matching the requirements. And for each of the 23 samples, we provide guidance in this way within our helpful booklet. So I mentioned some mapping as well. We have 23 sample policies and procedures. We have 40 provisions. So for each of those provisions that are on that piece of paper, the two sides of that piece of paper, how does each one of those relate back to the sample policies and procedures? Well, this grid indicates within the guidance that we provide on AMC how all of those provisions relate to those sample policies and procedures. Now, you may find as an individual firm that there are additional policies and procedures that you have that would relate to some of those provisions, or in fact, policies and procedures that you would need that would relate to those provisions. You could fill out that grid a little bit further, but it enables you to see that for every single provision, there needs to be something represented in a policies and procedures column. So by filling it out, and also by using it as a checklist as you go through the policies and procedures that exist within your organization, you can see how closely or how far away you are from getting to the requirements of all the AMC provisions. So this is a great way of seeing where you've got gaps and where you actually have enough information already available to say, yeah, we have matched the requirements of that provision. You can then go back to the sample policies and procedures and see if the level of information that you are including in your own policies and procedures is adequate enough. Requirements, policy, procedure. As I said, getting in line with AMC and putting together a set of ethical best practices that can be followed in your firm that drive the way your firm operates is not trivial. Of course it's not. There is going to be some work required up front to put this in front, but the benefits when it is in place are phenomenal. And it speaks to what the regulators are looking for the industry to do now. We also do a cross-reference guide that is text-based. So for each AMC provision, in this case, place clients' interests before their own, we identify within the sample policy manual every single different sample policy that relates to putting clients' interests before their own. So you can see of all the 23 different, here they're referred to as chapters, or you could say the 23 different policies and procedure sets, which ones relate to placing clients' interests before their own. There are also other documents that you are referred to, such as a client disclosure document, and potentially a space to put any other comments that are relevant to supporting this AMC provision. So all these materials are available through the AMC website, and there are links to those later on in my presentation. The other thing that we provide, as I said earlier, is sample forms. So these are forms that a firm can use to collect information from their employees to make sure that whatever information is required that supports the policies and the procedures that they have in place, trading, pre-clearance, ensuring there is sufficient time between a asset allocation change that the firm undertakes versus when the individuals are allowed to trade, conflicts of interest, any sort of information that is required like that. Here are some sample forms that could be used to help generate and collect the information required, indicating that the policy is being supported. These may be forms that have to be filled out on a regular basis. Employees have certain holdings within certain organizations or certain funds, and they just need to declare that on a quarterly basis. Or as I said, pre any trade, there needs to be authorization that that trade can be carried out. Probably you have things already in place around this idea, but these are just sample forms that a firm can take, change them to what makes sense for them, and make them part of the data collection supporting the policies and procedures supporting AMC. So we supply those sample forms as well. As I said earlier, all of those resources are available on our websites, and here we have a list of the different ideas, the code, the recommendations, the sample policies and procedures, the different grids that I've talked about, the sample forms, where you can go and find them on the website. All else fails, come back to me, and I will be able to direct you to those documents. So with that, I am now going to stop sharing and move to questions. So, Yemi, back to you.
Thank you so much, Ian. That was very, very insightful and engaging. And we have a few questions already in the chat box. I'll be getting them out one after the other for you to address. But there is a particular one that was put in there by, sorry, just a moment, Umulenga Karangwa, addressed to the panelists. Before I go to those questions for you, Ian, I'd like Ndako to please just quickly address this question from Umulenga Karangwa. He's asking, how do we build bridges between our markets and improve outcomes for participants in the investment management industry? Ndako, are you able to quickly address that? Can you unmute yourself?
All right, there. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
All right, fantastic. All right, so if I get the question, it's about how we can build bridges for cross-selling of products. So I see two areas that we all need to work together collectively on. One is, if I wanted to cross-sell, I need to understand first. So knowledge sharing is very important, both of the opportunities that exist within the market and the products that are being put forward in those markets. I know back in, I'll say maybe about 7 or 8 years ago, when there was a lot of interest between, I think, the Western Africa and East Africa business interests. One or two firms went to set up in East Africa within Nigerian firms in the financial services space. And there was a research company then that was trying to bring out research on East Africa to encourage investors, to come into that market. So I think more of this will be required through multiple forums. to ensure that investors understand the nuances in each market and the products that are available. So that's one. The second thing that I think would be very important is engagement with regulators. So say, for instance, one person or one individual wants to a cross-border investment. It might be that there are regulatory restrictions to attracting capital into a foreign market. We know that, at least in our markets, because of concerns around foreign exchange and things like that. So bringing regulators together will be another way to go to ensure that whenever we decide to build this bridge, we can actually act on it after taking away all the regulatory bottlenecks. So I think it's possible, but these are the areas that I think we'll need to address.
Thank you very much, Ndako. I'll now go to those questions for Ian. Oluwaseun typed in the chat box earlier, directing the question to Ian now, that going forward, will it be possible to claim compliance to GIPS and not be compliant with AMC as an asset manager and vice versa, given the fact that if you are claiming compliance to GIPS, you are probably a long way into claiming compliance with AMC.
They are completely separate standards. They address very different issues. Whilst they are both firm level codes, the Global Investment Performance Standards is all about the calculation and presentation of performance, predominantly for prospective clients. But obviously, the same information can be used when reporting individual returns to existing clients. So it is all around how you generate performance information, how you generate the returns, and what you need to present in order to ensure there is a full, fair, consistent, and comparable set of information describing the particular products the firm manages to prospective clients. That's GIPS. AMC is how a firm conducts itself overall. And as you've seen that in the presentation, the areas that it covers in terms of the principles and the sections that it addresses. So very different. That is conduct for the firm and how it conducts itself. GIPS is investment performance. You can claim compliance with either. Hopefully you would wish to claim compliance with both. They're both voluntary. So there is no drive that if you claim with one, you have to go to the other. Entirely up to the individual firm. We would love you to adopt both. You don't have to.
Okay, thank you. Oluwaseun, you have your hand up. I believe that your question has been addressed. I don't know if, your question has been addressed by Ian. Pabina Yinkiri, to Ian again right now. Pabina Yinkiri asked that, do all these policies need to be standalone, and can they be part of a larger policy? I guess talking to those policies that you need to adhere to, or when you are claiming compliance to AMC. Yeah.
Each of the provisions that is mentioned as part of AMC must be addressed. Now, it may be that there are certain aspects of those provisions that your firm doesn't engage in. For instance, proprietary trading was an example. If you don't undertake proprietary trading, you can just put that in the policies and procedures that because we don't do that, we do not need to address this particular provision. But each provision does need to be addressed. Now, if and as long as you could identify within your bigger set of policies and procedures where they specifically relate to AMC, so you put a double asterisk in the margin as you go through your larger policies and procedure document, so that if somebody comes in and says, well, you claim compliance with AMC, can you show me how you support that claim? As long as you could show that, then yes, it could be part of a bigger document. But you'd need to be able to show that all of those provisions have been addressed and that you have taken into account the requirements, you've got a policy, and you follow the procedures that support that particular policy. And you can gather that up and show that that is how you can manage to claim compliance with AMC. They can be part of a bigger concept, but they need to be addressed within that bigger set of information.
Thank you. I guess Remilekun Iwale's question has probably been partly addressed by you, Ian. That's talking to what is the evidence of compliance to AMC code?
Well, exactly. Some of that could be through the forms that you are collecting in order to show that there is no conflict of interest, or conflict of interest has been minimized, that the trading patterns of the employees are not, say, for instance, front running, or decisions that are made in terms of changes in asset management aren't being reflected in the trading that is occurring by the employees before the client assets are being managed accordingly. So you would be going through your policies and look at the procedures that are being followed, and have underlying that the data that indicates that those procedures are being followed, whether that be through forms or other ways of indicating that this is the way you have dealt with things. For instance, client communication. You may well say that you have some policy around client communication, the frequency with which it occurs, the information that is included in those standard client communications. You will have examples of that, up-to-date examples of that available, that show that your procedure is being followed and how that supports the policy that you have in place. So for each of those individual provisions, you would look at a practical example of what supports that particular policy, and keep that also to show that you are putting in place what you say you are doing. It's all very well to say it, but you actually have to do it, and there needs to be proof of it having been done. So it differs according to each of the disclosure, each of the provision you're trying to follow, how you would indicate how that is practically being done. But again, as you go through those provisions, you will be able to see, okay, I see that that's a collection of information. I see that it's taking a sample from what we're doing. I see that is trade tickets, for instance, many different things that could indicate that you are supporting the procedure that supports the policy. I hope that helps. It's a bit generic, but because it's a wide-ranging set of provisions, I can't get into the specifics on for this yet.
Thanks. Shade, in adding our own comments to Ndako's response to the question about building bridges, wrote in the chat box, cross-border investments and investing will also require the use of similar standards, such as AMC and GIPS, to ensure comparability when decisions are being taken. That's in addition to Ndako's response. For me, I also have a question for you, Ian, and that's talking to how easy it is for operators to adopt AMC vis-a-vis the kind of resources that need to be put in place in being compliant with GIPS, just to assure them that they don't have to break the bank or have a lot of resources before they can claim compliance with AMC. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, that's a really interesting question. The issue with GIPS, the big issue with GIPS, is that you need to have a minimum set of information in order to claim compliance with GIPS. And if you're an asset manager, that set of information, in terms of the time it covers, is since the inception of the firm or 5 years. So in order for you to say, I am presenting information in accordance with GIPS, that information has to be covering since you've been in existence or 5 years, whichever is the shorter. So if you've been managing assets for only 3 years, then you need to get your track record for those last 3 years in line with the GIPS standards before you can claim compliance with GIPS. If you've been managing assets for 7 years, you only need to look at 5 years worth of information before you can claim compliance with GIPS. Now, that 5 years, you could say, oh, okay, well, look, I'll start today. I'll go back 2 years, and in 3 years' time, I'll have a 5-year track record that is in compliance with GIPS. I'm willing to put in that effort and spend the 3 years working towards being able to make the claim. Now, whilst you spend that time building up that track record, you're still getting the benefits of putting in place all the calculations, the methodologies, the structure behind GIPS, but you're not allowed to formally claim compliance until you have that minimum track record. So that's GIPS. So there's quite a lot of effort required in generating that minimum set of information. AMC, once you've written your policies and procedures and they're in place for all those provisions that we've talked about as relevant, you then claim compliance. That's why I'm saying that the 365 days, we hope to come back and compare the numbers we saw on that chart for the continent to where we will be in a year's time. They can be significantly different, easily within a year. But somebody, I think, has to become the subject matter expert on AMC within each organization. You've got to look at your policies and procedures. You've got to compare what the laws and regulations are requiring you to do against what AMC is asking you voluntarily to do. You've got to fill out that grid in terms of the provisions and how we address each of those provisions. You've got to generate your policies and procedures yourself. Do not take those samples and say, oh yeah, that's good enough. These are policies and procedures that relate to your firm. They must reflect your firm, not some boilerplate sample. That's an easy catch for regulators. I'll just give you a little story with respect to GIPS, actually. In the US, the SEC decided to randomly sample firms that were claiming compliance with GIPS and see whether indeed those advertisements that they were making were valid. They selected 15 firms, and 14 of those firms were discovered to have insufficient policies and procedures. So much so that one of them actually had a policies and procedures template that said firm ABC complies with blah, blah, blah. They'd taken a template and hadn't even bothered to put their name in it. That was a dead giveaway to the regulator that they hadn't done what was required. Okay, if you're advertising that you claim compliance to a certain standard, you have to do that. So one other point about that as well is if a firm has within it a charter holder or a candidate, CFA charter holder candidate, CIPM candidate, or CIPM designee, as part of their code of standards, if they're operating within an organization that they know is falsely representing a claim with one of the CFA Institute standards, they are honor bound to talk to people within that firm and say, hey guys, we haven't quite got this right. We need to sort this out, okay? If they know that what they're doing does not support the claims they're making because of their own individual code and standards of best practices and professional conduct, they would talk within the firm. That can be very useful because here you have people within your organization that know what these standards are, know what they represent, and will help to make sure that you are, safe in terms of the claim that you're making. But that's something that they have to do because of their own code of standards that they follow. So yes, AMC can be quicker, but it is going to take initially resourcing to do that mapping, to do that change. But then what you can do within your organization is sweat those policies and procedures, make them work for you. This is firm-wide, a way of conducting yourself, a way of behaving. So make sure within your risk management, you incorporate the benefits of having those policies and procedures. Internal audit, make sure you benefit from following those policies and procedures. As I say, ensuring that employees know how they should be behaving. When you onboard employees, take them through what the Asset Management Code actually says, what it does, what the firm is doing to support that, so they know what they can do to support the firm. It's a very symbiotic relationship. These are the behaviors the firm supports. You, the employee, will be supported because we follow those behaviors, and you, the employee, know how you should behave when you are supporting the clients, when you're working on behalf of other stakeholders. Ultimately, a sustained firm is a firm that is going to support all the stakeholders, their shareholders, the communities in which the firm operates, the employees themselves through sustained employment, and the communities they live and work in. It all generates longevity and trust, and therefore growth within the marketplace. So do put in the necessary time to make sure the claim is valid and supported. But yes, 365 days time, I expect to see those numbers much bigger. I'll be back. Somebody else said that.
Yeah, that's a big gauntlet you've thrown down to us in Africa. I'd like maybe Rajiv to talk to that. How can we move the dial from just 3 firms in entire SAXA, that's Sub-Saharan Africa, ex-South Africa? South Africa, they have about 32. How can we move the dial from just 3 firms, 2 in Nigeria and 1 in Tanzania, within the next 365 days? Rajiv?
Well, I think, thank you, Yemi. Thank you, Jan, first of all, for this very intuitive and clear expose on the AMC as well as DRIPS. I have to say that the key word that Jan has used on and on again during his presentation is culture. And culture is a small word, but with very profound meaning and quite complex to understand as well. I will expand on this a little bit in my closing remarks afterwards, Amy. But I think it's really up to us as society leaders to really take the baton and walk and go and raise awareness and make our participants, our market industry participants, our firms see the benefit of it. Because I think that as long as firms do not see the benefit of having a good code of practice, be it for GIPS or be it for AMC or any other codes of conduct, you won't have much take on. Because let us face it, even globally, we see that, Ariane, maybe you could correct me there, the acceptability or the implementation of the AMC is, maybe you would not qualify it as being very much widespread elsewhere as well. But I would say that it's all a question of how best we can align the interests of the industry participants to those of adhering the AMC or any code of practice, standards, ethics, or that maybe ensure them that it is in their benefit to do it, but we will be able to enhance the acceptance and adoption of any code within our jurisdiction. Or the other way around would be that it is being imposed by regulators. So that's why I think even but the way that we are taking this forward, it is a voluntary guidance principle, and that's why we're really emphasizing on the culture, because developing the culture and having a set of regulations are 2 different things, because you can have the enforcement, the adherence to the regulation, but the culture, as Jan has really spent a lot of time explaining to it, it's an intangible, it's a mindset, it's a way of doing things. It takes time. Unfortunately, it's going to take time. It takes time, and I think it has been very well witnessed, experienced across the globe. We in this part of this world, I think we have the added advantage of having the possibility of standing on the shoulders of giants, because we have seen how others have done it before. Our industry is growing. It is still in its early development stages. If we get the culture entrenched very much in our society, very much within the industry, very much within the market participants, I think at an earlier stage, and even before you start becoming a market participant, I think we could make some leapfrog progress in that direction.
Thank you, Rajiv. Go ahead, Ian.
Excellent comments. And just to address the one about whether the uptake has been as much as we would like, as I said, 15 years and 1,150 firms overall. I think we can see from the quotes that I included early on in my presentation, it is only just now certainly post the global financial crisis, and many years since then, actually, where the idea of behaviors and long-term existence are coalescing together. As we saw, the references to culture and what matters in terms of culture, sustainability, generating a firm that will be here for the long term. These are ideas which are only just beginning to come out, even in the biggest corporations. Jamie Dimon, Larry Fink, mentioning these concepts in their shareholder letters, in their corporate social responsibility documents that they're providing. So I really believe for AMC, this is the time and the place where something like AMC can really make an impact on the thinking that is going in to the asset management industry about how it continues to grow and be useful, and the purpose behind asset management, what it is for. 40% of all assets globally that are being managed are there to support pensions, there to support folks who are not going to be able to earn income any other way. They are past working age and they need an income from the pension. And we have a true responsibility to support those who are unable to support themselves now, but have put things aside in the past in order to do that. And that is all about ethical best practices, putting the interest of the clients first. And that 40% of our industry is based on those assets. And big firms, large global firms, are beginning to recognize the importance of them putting their clients first and having a culture that supports the asset owners, the individual participants. So rather than standing on the shoulder of giants, I think this is the opportunity for areas which are just developing in this to become the giants, to actually set the standard in terms of their behaviors that others who have a legacy that they have to shake off can actually follow. And this is why I think at this particular time, bringing you all together is an excellent opportunity to capitalize on the fact that we have ethical best practices out there that can be adopted. And it's so much easier for firms that are thinking about what they should do to take these off the shelf and implement them than it is to try and change the direction a big ship has been going in for a long term, where there are other practices embedded in that organization. Let's set the standard with what the practices should be in these developing entities and move ahead with that and fly the flag for these best practices. So thank you, Rajiv, for your comments as well on that.
Thank you, Rajiv. Thank you, Ian. I think we still have just like a few minutes, but I'll, at this point, yield the spotlight to Rajiv Hasna, the President, CFA Society Mauritius, to give his closing remarks to today's workshop. Rajiv.
Yeah, thank you, Yemi. And good afternoon, everyone. Well, I would like, first of all, to thank you all for your participation. And I hope you found today's webinar interesting and intuitive as much as I did. A special thanks goes to CFA Society Nigeria for taking the lead in organizing this workshop, along with us, CFA Society Mauritius, CFA Society Ghana, and CFA Society East Africa. Well, thank you as well, Jan, for having shared with us all your thoughts on the Asset Manager Code. As Yemi stated at the start of this webinar, your dynamism and enthusiasm in AMC is indeed very much contagious. Thank you once again for that, Jan. Well, I hope we can keep the momentum on this type of joint webinar initiatives in line with what Jan has just said, but we are more or less of a fresh book, and let us write the chapters correctly in the right direction. And I hope that with the assistance of the CFA Institute, especially since the global pandemic has forced us all to reinvent and adapt ourselves to this new normal way of living and conferencing, but we would be able to conduct more of these joint webinar initiatives across CFA society within Africa, as well as with our market participants. Now, coming back to today's webinar on the asset manager code. It is indeed quite reassuring, but there is a will, at least from what I've heard today, across the markets that we have covered, at least by the CFA societies, to push for the adoption of the asset manager code. And from what Jan has just said as well, from the CFA Institute, it seems that it is a good idea. I agree fully, but starting with us in Africa, getting the AMC adopted, getting the right principles right first would be a great start, especially as our investment management industry is poised to develop further and hopefully rapidly in the coming years. Well, from what we have learned today, and obviously a refresher course for many of us as well, the asset manager code is very well defined and easy to put into practice. I'm not going to expand more on what, as Jan has done a wonderful job there. Well, this, along with the GIPS and the ESG disclosure standards for investment products, are a vast and powerful set of resources available to us as CFA societies, but we should make full use of. And this is what I'm really meant by standing on the shoulders of giants. And obviously, hopefully, as Jan said, that we could become giants in our own way as well, such that we are able to develop a good culture of ethics and professionalism across the markets that we're operating in. Well, as I said in my earlier intervention, the key word that I would like to take away today is culture. Well, let us look at how the dictionary defines this word. It defines this word as the ideas, customs, and social behavior of a particular group of people or society. Well, Jan has used this word a lot today in his presentation. The question that begs to us today is, how do we build a culture of ethics and professionalism? I would say that we should first identify the different constituents that would drive and foster this culture of ethical and professional behavior. We may have the tendency of starting with industry professionals and stopping with regulators. But I believe, though, that implementing a good culture of good practice throughout markets must undoubtedly also involve the investors, students, NGOs, and the public at large, among others. Well, I trust that we will continue on the good work and that we have started in our respective markets, and hope that gradually but surely we will be able to improve the level of compliance. I know that Jan will be back in 365 days. Well, we'll be waiting in our respective markets. In particular, I would like to end my closing remarks to today's webinar by reiterating what Jan stated on the ANC as being a practical signaling tool to our clients on the behavior that we are committing to adopt as an asset manager. And it is quite touching what you have said in your closing remarks just now, Jan, but asset managers, we have a great responsibility towards those who have entrusted their money with us, such that we are able to manage it to the best of their interests and ensure that they have the livelihood that they have wished for in their old age. Well, it is clear to us that we as society leaders, we should be the primary and most vocal advocate and promoter for the adoption of AMC in our markets, especially at the current early development stage of the investment industry in our jurisdictions. Well, let us all collaborate to have a good culture of ethical and professional behavior and French within our respective investment community and our stakeholders at large. Thank you all for attending to today's webinar. I think I will now leave it to Yemi. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rajiv. Before we finally close, Paula Fanera, the lead for Trustworthy Industry sub-team of CFA Society Nigeria's Advocacy Committee, responsible for pushing CFA Institute standards with operating firms. She has a special announcement. Paula.
Thank you very much, Yemi. Thank you once again, Ian and the team. Just to communicate one of the initiatives we have here at Nigerian Society, the Society in Nigeria, would be that in a year from now, November 2022, we would like to sort of like put the spotlight on the companies, the asset management firms that are AMC compliant. This is so that we give visibility to the companies that have built the culture that Rajiv has talked about, and give them, put them in front of asset owners and investors to say these are the companies that are ethical in terms of their practice and have shown and have attested to that fact. So we are encouraging a lot of asset management firms to take up this initiative, the AMC, adopt it, and then so that we can together build a continent that has players similarly that perceived to be ethical in their practices. So this is my special announcement. In November 2022, we'll be celebrating the firms that are AMC compliant. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paula. I'm glad to hear that. And I believe we'll be able to do it, especially with a lot of collaboration with our partners in the industry. I don't know if Indako is still on. I would like to hear him give us some assurance that we'll have the cooperation of FMAM to help us achieve this goal of having a lot more firms in Nigeria and across Africa to adopt these EMC standards. Dako, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
And thank you, Yemi, and thank you, Paula. Yes, you're correct. We're very happy to continue this collaboration, working with the CFA Society in achieving this goal of increasing the number of firms within this jurisdiction that are claiming compliance with the code.
Thank you. And on that note, I would like to say a big thank you to all participants of this event, everyone that has dialed in from Nigeria, from East Africa, from Ghana, from Mauritius, all our sister societies in those jurisdictions as well. And a big thank you to Ian for always coming through for us. We are going to be leaning more on you, especially with this big gauntlet that you have thrown down to us for us to be able to achieve bigger numbers than we currently have showing here. I'd like to say a big thank you to Advocacy Committee of CFA Society Nigeria, as well as all the participants too. And on behalf of the Board of Governors of CFA Society Nigeria, I wish everybody a good day. Thank you very much.
Thank you. A pleasure.
Thank you, Yemi.
Thanks all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yemi. Thank you,
Amy. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Well done. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.